How do we understand and how do we think about AI in education? And I have ideas about that too, but I don't have this all figured out just yet. And I'm joking because I don't know that there is anyone who's actually an expert about AI in K through 12 education. Welcome to Hallway Conversations. We're a trio of educators who have plenty of questions about teaching and learning and school culture, and we believe in the value of reflection and collaboration as we seek to keep growing as teachers. This podcast is our place for thinking out loud together about issues in education and why they might matter to Christian educators. Welcome to the conversation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 114th episode of the Hallway Conversations podcast. My name's Matt Beamers.
I'm Abby DeGroat.
And I'm Dave Mulder.
Our podcast is brought to you by our friends at the Center for the Advancement of Christian Education. We're always looking for topics of conversation and feedback, so please email us at hallwayconvospod@gmail.com. That's hallwayconvospod@gmail.com. Your feedback and your ideas are important to us. Dave and Abby, it's good to be back around the table. I know we have all been on the road a little bit in the last week. So Abby, maybe I can start with you. If you can share a little bit about where you were at, what you presented on, and maybe just what you noticed about some of the conversations you were having with K-12 teachers. And Dave, we'll get to you in a little bit.
Sure.
But Abby, let's start with you.
Yeah, well, I know that you know where I was, so I'll say it for the sake of the podcast, because you were with me.
Wow, you were drinking a lot of coffee, though.
But we were at the Christian Educators Association conference in Michigan. It was in Grand Rapids this time, so people who are from this area would be able to, I always tell people it's like Heartland. Right, our Heartland Teachers Convention. It's the Teachers Convention of all of the Christian schools in Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana area.
Sure.
Their annual convention. And so Matt had a table. We both presented. My presentation was on learning to write and writing to learn. And it was for exploring writing across disciplines, mostly for middle school, high school teachers. And so I had a great room full of teachers who were interested from all kinds of disciplines, and it was a really great conversation, actually.
Right in your wheelhouse.
It was. Yep. Pick things that are easy to talk about for me.
That's great.
So, yeah.
Perfect.
How about you, Matt?
I was with Abby there. It was actually a wonderful time.
It was awesome really good.
Hanging out with Abby, and lots of fun, but also just really cool to see former students.
There were a lot of them there.
People who have had such positive experiences at Dordt University, and always fun for me as, again, I know this is year 5, but to talk to older alumni that I don't know and say, like, who are the professors that made an impact on you? And and your, both of your names, Gwen's name, Barb, like everybody's name comes up at some point. John Van Dyke, for those of a different vintage, George Faber, Dennis Vanderplaat. So it's really cool to see. I think what struck me is the impact of our education department over the years, right? There's a consistency there, and so it was quite beautiful to see the legacy. All right. Dave and Abby, I started teaching in the fall of 1994, small Christian school just outside of Bozeman, Montana. That fall, the librarian introduced me to something called the internet. Something I thought was a bit of a passing fad at that time. Everything I needed was in a book. I remember landing pages such as Yahoo, Alta Vista, Lycos, other types of search engines, but I didn't really know how to use it. It was just way too much information at my fingertips. In fact, I remember my very first search was hockey in Canada. And it landed on, I still remember this, on some men's hockey league in New Brunswick or Nova Scotia. And I was like, and that's when I actually thought, this is amazing. Like, I'm in Montana looking at this random hockey league on the east coast of Canada. And that did make me wonder, like, not that I wondered about the, how do you leverage something like this, but just like, this is incredible, actually. Well, over the years, technology has changed. Back in the day, I felt pretty confident that I was keeping up with things. I think Napster was sort of the end of that, where I felt like I knew what was going on. Somewhere along the way, I couldn't keep up, and now I feel completely over my head. Not just that, but AI has added an element that I could not have anticipated. And quite frankly, while I'm intrigued by AI, it also intimidates me. And I find myself, if I'm honest, wanting to ignore it rather than deal with it, which is neither a reformed approach or helpful for me or my students. And I think it's why I want to talk about it today. But I also want to be transparent that I'll probably ask more questions and have very few answers. So this is learning for me. So to talk about AI for a few minutes, earlier, Dave, I asked Abby, I know you were on the road. And what I know about it is that it's an issue our colleagues are talking about it, our teachers are talking about it, students are talking about it. So Dave, I'm wondering if you can share what you were doing last week, because I know you were sort of at the epicenter of a conference of conversations about it, and we see you as our resident expert, and also you just had a chapter published in a book.
I did.
So we're going to put a link in the show notes for that.
Happily.
So I don't know whether it's the book or the conference. Can you just start talking a bit, Dave?
I'll maybe start with the conference, then I'll talk about the book later on too. But so this conference that I was at, when I was in grad school, over a decade ago now, my professors at Boise State encouraged us, my field is EdTech, right? I was in an EdTech program, and our professors encouraged us to join this professional organizations, the Association of Educational Communications and Technology. So, professional organization for EdTech researchers, which I have become, and the conference is an academic conference. So I feel like I need to qualify that because it's different than being at a teacher's conference like y'all are, right? When I'm going to sessions here, it's not to learn about my craft. It's not to learn like new techniques in teaching. I'm listening to other people present research papers, basically. Which I am a nerd, and I love that. And I've got very good friends in this EdTech field that we go and hang out together and nerd out to that.
But that's a good qualifier. Right? It's not the same.
Correct. And I just want to be very clear about that. So being at AECT, this conference I try to go to every year, and I've been like 8 times out of the last 10 years. It's an interesting way to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what's actually happening in my field, in the EdTech field. There's probably 2,000 members of this organization who are all people kind of doing what I'm doing, right? Teaching in higher education, but researching things about EdTech in particular. This year's conference, I'm not exaggerating, you guys. I bet half the sessions in the program guide had the terms artificial intelligence or machine learning. About half of them, right? And so when I say like this is in the zeitgeist in my specific discipline, it really is right now.
Right.
Like this is just the topic everyone's thinking about and talking about. Like this is a smart room, right? Like you get a couple hundred EdTech professors and people who are researching this stuff. And the feeling in the room was one of, I would say, skeptical optimism is the best way that I could describe it. These are not, people who are thinking that AI is going to be the solution to all our problems in education. It's not that. That's not what they're not out to sell something, anything like that. But neither are they, knuckle-dragging Luddites who are like, this is the end of education as we know it, right? The truth is probably somewhere in between. And the read in the room was like, let's press on this. Let's figure out what the limits are. Let's figure out what the potential is. And then, like I said, a healthy skepticism to say, let's just name what this is and what this isn't. And, to try to have a better imagination, I guess. That I think was really the way everybody kind of felt about it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have my own opinions, too. And thanks for mentioning the chapter, Matt. That was a good one. So this was for... ACSI, Association of Christian Schools International, puts out a book a couple times a year where they try to get, I was going to say experts, but I don't know if I'm an expert. I'm a supposed expert, relatively speaking, in different topics. And so the book that just came out was all about AI in Christian schools. And the chapter that I wrote for that one was, kind of trying to lay out a biblical framework for how do we understand and how do we think about AI in education. And I have ideas about that too, but I don't have this all figured out just yet. And I'm joking because I don't know that there is anyone who's actually an expert about AI in K through 12 education.
Dave, when I talk to teachers or even at the conference or just in general or even just our colleagues, like I mentioned earlier, part of me wants to ignore it, and I know I can't do that, but part of me does at times, right? It's like I just want to believe people aren't using it, like everyone. And I know that's not true. And I know some people are using it for good and some people are using it for not so great reasons, to cheat, right? And so for me, let's just say, hey, I want to be ignorant about it or naive. Others who are strongly opposed to it, also others in our field who are strongly for it.
Right.
it just seems like people are, and I know there's no answer, and I'm not looking for an answer of to embrace or to reject, but it just feels like it's such a wide, there's just such a disparity in people's emotions. And just from your discussions, what is leading some people to just want to reject it, and what is wanting some people to fully embrace it?
Yeah, so I think this often happens with new technologies. And this is the irony with AI, right? Like everyone feels like this is brand new and it's bursting on the scene, but I bet you've been using AI in your daily life.
Yeah.
I seriously, for at least 5 years, if not 10 years, right? Because like predictive text on your phone is AI, and spell check on your word processor, that's powered by AI.
When I get in my car in the morning, my phone tells me how long it's going to take me to get to Dordt University.
All of that powered by AI, right? Like,
do you usually go faster or slower?
No, it's pretty right on. It knows my habits very well.
No speeding tickets.
That's the scary part, like how accurately it can predict, right?
And it knows exactly where I'm going.
Right.
At what time of day.
Yes. And so it's keeping track, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's maybe something just to be aware of, right? Like it feels like this is something brand new. And I think, AI chatbots like ChatGPT or Google Gemini, or there's a bunch of other ones too. I learned a new one that I think I'm going to be playing around with called Claude, Claude.
Okay.
I'd never heard of it before, but it's kind of designed for education.
You're looking at me like if you've never heard of it.
No? Anybody?
I think that's the one that we used on the committee I was telling you about earlier. Yeah, so I'm on a church committee right now, and part of the committee's task involved surveying the congregation about some things, and some of the questions were open-ended, and we were thinking through as a committee how to consolidate the responses from like the 250 people that responded, right? To the survey.
Right.
And we have a committee member who is quite well versed in AI for his job and suggested it as a way to summarize the open-ended questions.
Yeah.
And actually, it's been incredible.
Wow.
I've been incredibly impressed with its ability to take all of the responses we got, you dump them in, and it will give you themes with concise summaries of the comments under those themes. And we went through as a committee and we fact-checked and we looked at what it spit out to say, is this accurate? But it saved us a ton of time, and it took out all the subjectivity of our own...
You've got biases when you're reading
we've got biases,
right?
we've got preferences, things that we would probably choose to highlight that the tool doesn't have.
Right.
And so in our report, we're going to very much name that this is what we used to summarize the data, but it was an incredibly powerful tool, and I think it was Claude.
Yeah, I bet.
That he used.
And this is the thing, like I'm a qualitative researcher too. Like I like to tell stories about people's experiences with technology, and I can imagine AI being a really helpful tool for that kind of work.
Right.
Just exactly what you're describing there.
Dave, if I think then as an educator or either school leaders or teachers listening, for someone to say, well, no AI, we're not going to allow AI, is that wise? Is that even possible?
Yeah.
And if not,
then what?
Then what? And I think that's what teachers are wondering. Again, I'm not.
And
either of you.
I think that's partly why people are afraid of it. I know for me as a teacher, I have tons of experiences with taking a source, summarizing it, pulling quotes out, teaching students how to do that. Do it well, do it without plagiarizing, citing sources. I taught that over and over again.
Right.
In my high school writing courses. I don't have a lot of experience with how to manipulate AI or how to use it for a writing assignment without crossing the line into plagiarism. So how do I teach that then?
And I think that's the line that people really need to navigate, right? So at this conference, one of the two phrases that kept coming up over and over again, one of them was ethical implementation, right? Everyone's talking about ethical implementation. And I think that's really what we're trying to say with this. Like, how do I ensure that students are doing the work students should be doing? And I would flip that around and say, how do I ensure teachers are doing the work teachers should be doing, right? That's a whole other conversation to be had too. But the other phrase that kept getting used was the human in the loop. Like, we have to keep a human in the loop. And I think that that's the other piece that's really, really important. That's why I love your story
Can you
about
talk
that.
about what that means?
Yeah.
Dave?
So instead of just let the AI do the work and then you're just going to copy and paste whatever the AI outputs and just use that, it's got to have human touch on it. So yeah, the way you write your prompt for the chatbot, yes, that's part of the human in the loop. But also when you read the result, never just use the result. You have to actually read with some thoughtfulness, because AI hallucinations are a thing. That sounds ridiculous, right? But ChatGPT pretty famously makes stuff up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It does, because it's just an AI chatbot. All it is a really sophisticated math problem. Yeah. And what it's doing is predicting based on probability if this word is associated with this word. I've got this huge body of language, and if this word is associated, it's trying to make the best assumption of what the next good word to choose is. That's all it does.
Which my brain can't
wrap
around.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I think, keeping a human in the loop is going to be the most important practice. One of the AI tools I really like that I've been playing with for the last 6 months or so is called Magic School. If you go to magicschool.ai, you can sign up for a free account.
Yep.
Remember, if it's a free account, that means you are actually the product, right? You just got to keep that in mind, right? If it's free, there's a reason it's free. So they're collecting data about you and your usage of it. But it's a pretty powerful tool. And the way Magic School always says it on their website is AI can get you 80% of the way there. Yeah. And I like that as a rule of thumb, right? If you're going to use AI, recognize you're going to still have to do 20% of the final work. Whatever is output by the AI, you're going to have to fix it. It isn't going to be what you need, right? All that. To your original question, though, Matt, what you were asking about, for teachers that are anxious about AI, or what's happening here, it reminds me very much of conversations I was part of back around 2002 about this World Wide Web thing. Yeah. And I can remember vividly, I was not the technology director at the school I was teaching at yet, but having a conversation with the tech director and a couple other middle school teachers, what are we going to do with this internet thing? And I can remember feeling what are you talking about? What are you going to do with this? I mean, you're going to adapt because this is such a powerful tool.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And I would say that now, 20 years on, can you imagine teaching without the internet today? I know I used to.
Yeah.
Right.
There was a time in my teaching career I did not use the World Wide Web, right? Today, I can't imagine that.
Right.
And I think that we will probably land in a place 20 years on, looking back, how could you even teach without AI?
Right. Well, I've already come to appreciate it so much in I've noticed on my Google searches.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of having to look through the answers, AI will do a summary of whatever question you ask at the top. Have you all noticed that yet?
I've noticed that too. Very
and it's
helpful.
actually incredly helpful.
Right. Yeah.
I like it a lot.
There's
Even on
benefits.
Facebook, if there's a ton of comments, Facebook gives a summary now of what the comments say, and you don't have to read them all.
Which is intriguing.
It is intriguing.
Right? My time is precious. How am I using my time, right?
Yeah, it's interesting.
So, can either of you think about the potential impact of AI on teacher pedagogy?
Yeah, I worry a lot about student writing.
Oh, yeah.
Because that is kind of my wheelhouse. It's what I was just talking about. And I did talk about AI in that session just a little bit, because I really think that if I was at a session at a different conference not very long ago as a listener, where teachers were talking about implementing AI tools and thinking through, and they had almost given up on the idea of making students write and saying, they're going to be using it. How can you make sure they're interacting with it, and kind of giving up on the idea that students were still going to be writing longer pieces. And that's not where I am.
No, that pains me to hear that, actually.
I actually really believe in the power of writing for learning. And so I think my emphasis is going to be on, this is why we are writing. This is why I'm expecting you to do this work. Right? This is not for me. Your summary of a book is to show me that you can think about what you're reading in these ways. Right? And so being intentional with the why, I think, is going to be huge, so that students don't use AI. And then I've been thinking a lot about not catching, but putting the burden of proof on students. So if something that should be yours to author doesn't seem like you authored it, then you're going to have to prove to me that you did.
Yeah. That's
so
valid.
How would you do that,
a burden of proof.
So ask. Because I like that, but I'm just wondering, my first thought is, how would you do that?
So I first heard this from another professor who said, well, you just use versions of, you have drafts.
Yeah.
save drafts of your work.
Yeah.
Google, if you're using Google Docs, you can see in real time edits.
There's a revision history.
There's a revision history. Yeah. And if the revision history is everything appears at one time, well, then you copied and pasted it into into the document. Right? So revision history, having them define any vocab used within the writing. When I said that at the conference that I was teaching this session in, they were like, oh, yeah, because they all have students who will produce AI writing, and they have no idea what it actually says.
Right, because it's using vocab that they clearly don't actually use on a daily basis.
Right? Or verifying sources. Produce the sources you use to write this. Or, like, redo a portion of the assignment in view of the professor. Be willing to answer questions, have a discussion about it. Right. So telling them, like, if I suspect that you're using AI to short circuit your own thinking, then you're going to have to prove to me that you're not.
I think I'll piggyback on that. So maybe a very positive approach to this would be have students document how they're using AI. Like make that a norm. Like if you're going to use AI, okay, let's talk about that then. Yeah. And document. One of my friends who teaches computer science education, who I hung out with at this conference, that's one of the things he's been doing really intentionally. So when you submit a paper at the end of it, if you use AI in any way, shape, or form, submit the prompt, submit the output from the AI, show the progression, show the human in the loop, right?
Yeah.
Like you actually did, okay, so what did you write at the beginning of this to get something from the AI? How did you use the output to get to the final result, right? Like, I really like that as an idea. And I think there is kind of that sense of, I want to assume good intent from students. So I always tend to point the finger at myself. If I'm pretty sure students are cheating because I gave them some crappy assignment to do, I better look at myself in that first, right? Because if their temptation is, I think there's an easier way for me to do this, well, then we need to tell a better story about the good work that they get to do. To be, like you're saying, right? Like, you try to give them a compelling argument to actually do the real learning. Because if you're just going to short circuit your learning with the AI, if it's all about a points game and you're just trying to get enough points to fill up your bucket, well, that's on us too. We need to think about
then
that.
What are we doing here?
That, right? Yeah. Because education should be more than accumulating points.
Yeah.
Is it okay for Christian teachers to use AI for lesson planning and grading?
Well, I hope so, because I am. So.
Because I think this really is a struggle, right? Like even as one teacher said to me, like, well, I can't ask my students not to use it and then not use it myself.
I think there's a good conscience.
Yeah, can you talk about that?
I joke and I laugh, but I'll be candid about that. So I don't think I've created a rubric myself from scratch in over a year. And I create rubrics regularly, right? But this is one of those places where I could spend an hour creating a rubric, or I can write a really good prompt that's going to take me 5 minutes to write the prompt exactly how I need it to be, and ChatGPT will write me a really good rubric. And then I still usually have to fix a little bit on the end, because there's a little bit of that. But it saves me a tremendous amount of time. Wow. So
see, and that's something that I feel like is just a good use of a tool, because a rubric is not a personal piece of right. It's not an email. It's not. You're not impersonating yourself.
Right.
It's not impersonating you.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
And I'm transparent with students, like the fact that I'm using the AI to create the rubric. I'm going to tell them that. For one of the classes that I teach in our core program, I could show them a film every week. We don't watch that many films, but there are times where it's like, I just need a good synopsis of this film. And so I'll use ChatGPT for that all the time. Could I? I've seen all these movies myself. Could I write those things myself? Sure, I could. Yeah. But instead, I can save a lot of time, and I can say, I need a synopsis of this film focusing on these themes, make it 200 words. 30 seconds and it's done, right? And then I'll give those to students, and I'll always tell them when I'm doing it, because I want to model that ethical practice, right? I want to model that for them. In the same way that if we're going to expect students to cite sources, we better be citing our sources. If we're going to expect students to say where you got this picture from, we better be modeling that. Same kind of thing here. If I'm going to use AI, I'm going to tell them so and tell them how I'm using it. I think that's ethical.
How about you, Abby? Your thoughts on
I haven't used it a ton, to be honest. And I think it's just because it hasn't, like I said, I haven't been immersed in it enough. I haven't. It's not part of my practice yet.
Maybe this is helpful. This is from the chapter that I wrote too. I talk in there about, like, we need to be careful about not shooting on other people, but I'm going to do this. I think what we should be doing as Christian educators is keeping in mind that we always use tools. Like, this is part of how we are created. We are created in God's image. He is the creator. We are created to create things. And we use tools in all kinds of different ways, right? And the old adage in the EdTech world is if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem starts to look like a nail. That's a problem, right? So you need a variety of tools to do a variety of things. And part of my argument in the chapter was that this is actually, I think, how we reflect God's image, that we can be creative, we can generate new ideas based on what God has created. And then to just keep in mind the limitations of human knowledge and human capacities, right? We are not God.
Yeah. But David, what would you say to the teacher, though, like who would say, yeah, amen to that, but this isn't creating, this isn't imaginative, this isn't... I'm asking somebody else, that's something I have no control over. To be creative and imaginative for, because that, like, I agree with what you're saying, but I know the pushback is I'm not doing the creating.
Right.
And so how would you respond to that?
This is a complicated question that you're asking here, right? Because there is a sense in which whatever the old adage in computer science is garbage in, garbage out, right? Like if you start with bad data, you're going to end with worse data, right? And so learning how to write a really good prompt is going to be a skill set, and teachers are going to need to learn how to do that. Students are going to need to learn how to do that. And I think you can make an argument that there is actually a creative aspect to leveraging AI by writing thoughtful, carefully constructed prompts to get the result that you want. That said, it is kind of a black box. Once I put input in, I don't know what's happening behind it, and I get a result, right? And that, I think, is the unsettling thing for a lot of us. And for me, too. I come off sounding like some kind of techno-optimist. I'm not. I said this to Abby before we started recording. Like, I'm technophilic. I love technology, but I am an EdTech skeptic. And, like, I hold it at arm's length, and I am realistic about the potential, but I'm also realistic about the problems.
You know, I'm picturing people my age in their early 50s, been teaching for 30 years. This is a big thing. I don't know where to start. It's easier to bury my head in the sand. I know people are using it. I'm going to assume good intent, and by that I mean I'm going to be naive about it. And I know that's not the answer. What are some places for people like me who are skeptical, unsure, intimidated to be like, hey, try a few of these things, whether it's in my practice or even in my lesson creation or assessment?
Yeah. So a couple things that I would recommend, like if you've never played with an AI chatbot, sign up for an account at ChatGPT. You go to chatgpt.com, and the free version of it there, it's worth just playing with it a little bit. As I say this, the caveat is it's, again, a free thing, and if it's free and it's a tech thing, you are the product, right? So never put anything too personal or too private in there, right? Like that. But try, like, ask it to write a summary of a film that you've watched and see how close it gets. Ask it to write a summary of a novel.
Things you know and can almost test it against.
Right.
I asked it to write a lesson plan one time.
Yeah, it'll write a good lesson plan. If you give it a standard,
very decent.
Yeah.
And a strategy. Right. So I did like a I do, we do, you do.
There you go.
And a concept and a grade level.
And it will give you, again, I would say it gets you 80% of the way there, right? There's still going to be things you have to work on. Something else that I would say, if you want to just play around with this at least, try having the AI create multiple choice questions for you. If you give it a specific topic, and the more specific, the better with that. If it's very general, you probably won't get the results you're looking for. But just say, hey, try writing me 5 multiple choice questions with 4 options for each answer on these topics, and you know, see what you get. And
in some ways, that's no different from us using the questions in a teacher's manual.
Right.
Or using, I had, a textbook with questions that came in a software package along with it, right? So it's a tool. It's just a different kind of tool that we've been using for a long time.
One other that I would recommend is if you have, like you were saying, Abby, like a general purpose informational kind of an email, ask the AI to try writing it. Like, give it the parameters that you need. Like, I need an email. I'm a teacher. Oh, that's the other. If you can give it some kind of a sense of the purpose for the writing, you're going to get a better result too. So, like, I'm a teacher. I teach 3rd grade, and I'm writing an email to parents about our upcoming field trip. We are going to this place. Something like that. You're going to be surprised maybe at what can get generated. And I think that helps to demystify a little bit of it.
play around with it.
Yeah. Like consider this permission to play, right? To try things out. And maybe that's the takeaway. I just had this thought, like maybe I need to start putting together a demystifying AI presentation that I could take to some Christian school conferences and take the show on the road.
No.
Yeah.
Final question for either of you. Passing's normative, but if I say to you, what's the threat of AI in Christian education, and what's the opportunity of AI in Christian education? Maybe the threat first. What are some of the things that come to either of your minds when you think about the potential threat of AI in the educational process?
I think the biggest threat that I see is what Abby was already getting at a little bit, so I don't want to steal your thunder, but that idea of, are there ways we're short-circuiting students' learning? Okay. If we're using AI without care and without some thoughtfulness about how we're going to implement this, I think it is very possible to just kind of short circuit the real work of learning. Because learning's hard. Learning takes effort. I shouldn't say learning's hard. Really great teachers make learning easy, right? But learning is work, right? To actually learn something and master it. It takes a sustained effort to learn something. And it is possible to short circuit that if we're not thoughtful about it. So to me, that's one of the bigger threats.
How about for you, Abby? Anything come to mind? Do you think a threat of AI?
I don't ever want teaching and learning to come down to a catching students cheating.
That's an arms race that you cannot win.
Correct. Right. And I don't like it was a problem before AI.
Yes.
As well. So I don't want to act like AI is implementing this
Suddenly
problem.
now
Students are going to cheat. Right. Because that's not true. But I do think that it has the potential to, because it's not as easily fact-checked as like if you're copying something from an article, for example. Right. That it can be like a round and round. I don't want it to make enemies between students and teachers. Right? That's what I don't want.
That's the threat. And if you think about the potential good, Dave, in a few lines, what are some things that come? Because I think we do need to hear this too, right? Because there is.
Oh, I think so.
Lots of good.
And in the same way that I think the World Wide Web it changed education for sure. It did. We'd been naive to say that it didn't. I think, this is my biased perspective as an EdTech guy, I think adding the internet into education was a net good overall. Were there challenges? Yes. I think we're going to see the same kind of thing with AI, and I think one of the net goods is it's going to force teachers to eliminate some of the scut work that they're assigning to students. Because if it really is this low-level scut work that we're asking them to do, the AI is pretty good at that kind of work, right? And so we need to get better then. I need to get better. I won't put you all in this, at asking students to do real work for real people that meets real needs, that gets beyond just low-level regurgitation tasks.
Yeah, good. How about you, Abby, if you think about the potential good in either your classroom or even your kids' classroom?
Yeah, I hope it shows them some of the power of the magic that is being a human, right? Because they're going to look at the difference between something that AI produces or writes versus doing it themselves and having that uniqueness, that voice. I hope that happens.
The AI is good at technical writing. It is not good at emotive writing because there's no soul behind this machine, right? That's right. And so it's going to get the grammar right. It's going to have the punctuation, capitalization perfect, but it has no soul. And we need to remember that there is a difference, because we are souls, right? There is something different about what humans are capable of than what the machine can do.
I feel like this is the first time we've talked about this on the pod, and it's not going to be the last time. I feel like as this evolves, I think we'll keep coming back to it. So thanks to both of you for your insights and your expertise. Friends, we know your time is valuable, and we want to thank you for joining us today for another hallway conversation. Whether it's this day, this week, or this month, we hope the Lord gives you what you stand in need of, and we'd like to send you from here with this blessing. So to our listeners, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace and give you peace and give you peace. Amen. Thanks for listening, everyone. We hope you have a good week.
This podcast was literally dreamed up during one of our actual hallway conversations. Our music is by Ethan Mulder. Hallway Conversations is created and produced by Matt Beamers, Abby DeGroat, and Dave Mulder. Hey, we have a favor to ask of you. Would you be willing to rate this podcast or write a review in your podcast app? Or if you found this conversation interesting or helpful, would you consider sharing it on your social media? Those things really do help podcasters out, and we would be so, so grateful. Thanks for listening, friends.
And she walked away.
Like, police this situation?
Yeah.
Are you guys okay?
Tears were coming down my face.
Okay, now we've crossed over into hyperbole for everyone.